welcome to the Bleeding Hearts Club, where we alchemize pain into something beautiful together. I am your co host, Stevie, and I'm a tarot reader, Reiki master, death doula, and therapist. And this is my co host.
I'm Shroot. I'm an astrologer, and I'm so excited that we're back in it, recording another episode. Today, we're going to be talking about friendship. We'll be continuing our conversation from last time. So if you didn't see our second episode, go ahead and check it out. Um, so yeah, we're going to continue our conversation. Do you want to go into our first question? Because you were the one who had brought it up.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I saw something on Instagram. We'll link it
It'll
in
be in the
the
show
show
notes.
notes. But it made me think about how do our friendships give us an opportunity to reconnect with our shadow selves, or what do they show us about our shadow selves that we judge or that we don't accept? And yeah, we
We're
just end up
getting
away.
right into it.
What
As
do you think? Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Sure. I was like Scorpio dominant as we are. I think this is like the perfect question for both of us because I think that for both of us, I think so many of our friendships have really uh put our shadow selves like right in front of us. And I think that for me, in the moment, I think it can be hard to do this, but I think in hindsight, looking back and reflecting, I think I have a lot of gratitude for the ways that maybe, the way I reacted in a friendship or the way that I was just like really activated by something in a friendship, whether it was a dynamic, whether it was a personality trait of somebody else, the way that it kind of revealed to me either something I wasn't accepting about myself or something that um I was envious because somebody had something that I didn't. That was something I really struggled a lot with growing up was, I really envied a lot of relationship dynamics that I thought people had, where it was like my projection onto maybe they weren't even my friend. Maybe I just saw them around and I was like, oh, like I wish I had that. Like they're so lucky they have that. And I think so much of like my 20s has been about like really understanding that like if I ever got to know any of those people and they became my friends, I kind of suddenly became human, right? They became, oh yeah, that dynamic that I thought was so amazing when I was in maybe like middle school or just, it was like, oh, in reality, they're just people and they have, the same types of, imperfections or struggles or um things missing from their life that I do. And that like it says more about me and where I'm at and what's unfulfilled in my life and my needs than it does anything about the other person. So I think like for me, it's been a really powerful lesson to kind of when I feel something, I feel really activated by somebody else. I always check in with myself. Like sometimes I'm too angry or I'm too activated. I can't do that in the moment, but I always try to come back and I say, okay, like what is this telling me about myself? And where is what's like missing within me that I feel like I need to uh project onto somebody else or be really irritated about, the way that somebody else is reacting to something or like where is that like a missing piece within me and how can I like work on fulfilling that for myself. So that's been like I'm grateful for that, but like it's never a fun process. It's always pretty like intense. So, what do you think?
Ugh, that's so real. I think, oh my God, what did you say?
Hi,
My
Leo.
yelling.
That
Sure.
was funny.
He doesn't want me to be great.
No,
Um, he ruined my
I
thought.
know.
I'm just gonna take it in then. You can see the little box above my head
Yeah.
now.
Looks like a hat.
It's my thinking cap.
You literally. So you're like loading, thought loading.
Yeah. I'm just gonna take that in. I'm gonna take it in. It resonated with me, and I feel like I don't have to say anything about it.
That's fair. Yeah, I would encourage people, watch the first link in our show notes. It's an Instagram video, and that creator is freaking amazing. Just always the most thought-provoking content. So definitely check them out. And really think to yourself, like what is um like in your relationship dynamics, what comes up for you when you're noticing, really intense emotions or really intense like dislike or distaste or irritation? Um, is there something within you that you're like, oh yeah, that's not a need that I'm meeting for myself? And so that's another thing actually I think that I would love to talk about is like I think I had a really, and I think we touched on this a little bit last time, but I really had an unrealistic expectation when I was a kid for like what friendship was supposed to do for me. And I felt like because I'm an external processor, I think, and I, didn't really have too much of a concept of mental health, nor did I really have access to mental health support, as a teenager. And so I kind of relied on my friends to be that kind of support of external processing, allowing me space. And of course, they were wonderful. They gave me that support, but I think it gave me a unrealistic expectation of what friendship was for. And I think learning that like I'm never going to feel securely attached within myself if I'm looking for like that kind of attachment like through somebody else. Like if I'm looking for that external validation, if I'm looking, oh yeah, like there were so many things when I was a kid where or even like just like my early 20s where it was like, oh, like I don't know what I should do, but if I reach out to my friends and they tell me what they think, like I can trust them. Like it was kind of like it was like from a lack of trust within myself or a lack of like secure attachment within myself. And so I think understanding for myself that like, oh yeah, like if I can like learn to cultivate that within myself to be able to say, hey, like I trust my decisions. I also trust my ability to nurture myself. I also trust my ability of like being able to soothe myself and that yeah, I can leverage, other forms of support, energy work, therapy. I can build out a support system that extends beyond my friendships. That means that I'm not looking for my friendships to then be that source of external processing. But I can still like vent and I can still, share space with my friends in that way without that heavy expectation of like my friends will help me diffuse this like big emotional burden that I'm holding. It's like, okay, no, I have to take responsibility for the idea that like I'm the one who manages this, like I'm the one in the driver's seat of my own life and my own like self and my relationship to myself. And so I should stop looking to my friends to be uh like that for me to kind of drive me instead of me driving myself. So that was like I think one of the biggest lessons I learned about friendship. And I'm so grateful that my friends were so patient with me. Nobody ever made me feel like that was a problem or I shouldn't be doing that. It was something I kind of realized on my own. And I'm just so grateful that they held that space for me for as long as I needed it. Because um their like support is like where I, any of my successes where I, if anybody appreciates what they hear from me in readings or anything like that, it's like so much of that was learned through these really, really supportive friendships. So I'm grateful, but I'm also grateful for myself for stepping into the driver's seat and taking responsibility for um, looking to myself and building out my own dedicated team to meet my needs as opposed to expecting that from somebody else. So.
Ugh, I heard so much from that. And also, Leah was like insufferable.
Oh no. I didn't
Something
hear him this time.
I put myself on mute for that
Okay,
reason.
okay.
Something that I was hearing from that was just like your friendships were a way for you to kind of co-regulate
Hmm.
until you could figure out how to do that and trust yourself to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
Ah, and you were talking about nurturing and all of that stuff. And we're just going to get into it with the tarot later, but like that's
Yeah.
exactly, yeah, what was going on.
Real cancer season topic.
Seriously. Ugh. Is it okay if I share?
Yeah, please.
My thinking cap is back every
Yeah.
time. Okay. When you were talking and when I was just kind of reflecting on this for me, I noticed that I feel really judgmental or activated by people who are showing up in ways that I wasn't allowed to, or ways I'm not allowed to if for some reason or another. Like if somebody is, oh my God, if somebody is like dominating a conversation or taking up a lot of space in a conversation without the self-awareness that they're doing so, that activates me. That activates me so much. And I realize that it's because I don't do that. Or maybe I did do that I'm sure I did that as like a teenager, like definitely in middle school, no self-awareness, high school, no self-awareness. And when you were talking too, it made me think of like just all the ways that I would trauma dump in my friends, in the group chats,
Mhm.
in everything. Like I just didn't have an awareness of the kind of space that I was taking and how that might have impacted other people, impacted the group. Um, but I think about that and like I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not allowed to do that, or I wasn't allowed to do that because maybe everybody around me was allowed to just talk over each other or like redirect the conversations about themselves. And I just got really used to nothing being about me, nothing being brought back to me. I understood at some point that like anytime I would just jump in, anyone that I would just interrupt, like that, there were so many layers to that. Like it was either, well, one, I have ADHD and I didn't know that I was doing it. Like I never think that it's being done out of harm or malintent. I just think it's coming up because that's how it's coming up. But ADHD, or if I brought the conversation back to myself, or the only way for me to get time and to get space was to forcibly make that time for myself. And that definitely happened a lot. I think when I was working um, with some very high level people in a workplace who they were just going to dominate the conversation and they were never going to be like, Stevie, what do you think? Or like I saw it, like they just had to talk over each other. I don't know if they were actually really hearing each other, but that's just what I was noticing. And I think as a neurodivergent person, I'm noticing these patterns of like how people are interacting with each other, and it didn't feel comfortable or natural for me to do after a certain point, after I realized like, oh, I interrupt people or I talk over people or I'm showing up pretty obnoxious and I don't want to do that. Um, and then on the flip side, other side, a different side, um, I can see that in other people too. Like maybe interrupting or maybe taking up space is because there are no outlets for them to be heard. Maybe it indicates a history of being silenced. Maybe it indicates a history of like not having space made for them, not receiving care, or feeling like they have to show up in a very confident, not boastful, because I don't want to place like ego on it, but like, they have to present themselves in a certain way in order to get care or praise or affirmation. And I don't know if that makes sense, but like that is just a full circle way of saying that I see it and I get icked out by it or like activated by it because I see myself. And I think that just tells me that I need to redirect a lot of love and care to those parts of me, to those versions of me. And also, like, if I'm saying I want to be heart centered and I want to be compassionate and I want to show up in all these ways in community, I got to do that. I have to like build in that understanding that like people aren't always doing things because they have any bad intentions or because they don't think that other people in that space matter. It's just how they are. And there was something else that I wanted to say. Hmm. Yeah, maybe I'll just leave it there for now.
That's a really good point. And especially the piece of like when you see someone else doing something or acting in a way that like you don't have access to, like, oof, oof, I felt that. I felt that hard. And I think um I'm on the other side of what you were talking about, where I totally it was something, it was really late in the game for me to realize how much space I could take up in a conversation. So astrologically, I have my Leo Mars in the seventh house, which is the house of one-to-one relationships. And so actually I was just talking about this with Andrew last night, or maybe 2 nights ago, where we were talking about how where you have Leo in your chart is like, especially if you have Leo placements, it can be a place where you have really, really hard time seeing like outside of yourself, or like around yourself, or like, you know, uh like that's just like a part of you that takes up a lot of space, because Leo energy inherently is very much like spotlight, on you kind of thing. And it may not be something that you realize. And so when he was saying that, I was like, oh my God, yeah, like that makes complete sense of like why I'm like I can get so excited in it's like that plus neurodivergence, but like I can get so excited in a conversation and I could just keep going. It was so much worse than as a kid. It was bad. And yeah, I wouldn't realize that. And so I was thinking about when you were saying the way you described like this dynamic of like, I think it kind of can come down to like the level of consideration that we may have for others in a conversation, because I think as a Libra, I care so much about what other people think, and not in like I care what they think about me kind of way, although that is a part of it, but like in terms of like genuinely want to know what other people think. I love connecting with people, and so I don't like connecting with people just so that they can hear me talk and like validate me. Like that's really not where I'm intending to come from. It's like I love just exchanging ideas and sharing with people and connecting with people. And so like I forget that people don't share in the same way that I do, where if I'm excited, I'm going to leap into a conversation and I'm going to share my piece. And I, in my head for years, would just hope somebody would do the same. And the funny part is, I'm like always friends with introverts who don't interact like that. They all wait for me to be done and then they speak. And I'm like, that's just like not like my necessarily natural form of communication. And it took me a really long time to understand that like it's important for me to be a good friend and respect the other ways that people can show up in a communication and like in exchange, and to be able to like, for lack of a better term, shut up and just like hold like that space and like learn different ways to show up in relationships. So that was like a really tough lesson for me to learn. And I'm sure so many people who I grew up with or even spent even my 20s with would be like, yeah, we know. That was not a surprise to anybody. But I think learning that has helped me show up in readings, where I think readings have become a really powerful space where I'm able to listen like really, really well. But I still have to fight for my life when I get excited, because I'm like, oh my God, like I have something I want to say and I'm so excited. But I always try to remind myself that like it's an act of consideration to like allow other people to speak, even if it means I lose my idea, even if it means that like um I don't get to share, like that's fine. Like to me, the more important thing is to be in an exchange with somebody else where they feel heard and they feel safe enough to share. Because that's like such an honor to me. It's like such a privilege to receive that from people. So uh, I think that's one of the hardest lessons I've had to learn in friendships and in like being a human being. It's just like not something that came easy to me at all. And it's still something that I have to like fight against when I'm like activated or nervous or anxious. So I appreciate hearing the other perspective on that.
Of course. Oh my God, when you were saying that, like you have friends, all your friends are introverts who wait their turn. Stop. That's me. I'm that
Yeah.
friend.
I feel so bad.
I really am that friend.
Yeah.
I remembered, damn, every time you say something in my head, I'm like, damn, you hit that. But then I want to bring it back. I forget.
Oh no.
Pretty interesting that my cat Leo settled down once we started talking about Leo placements.
Oh, hey. A little acknowledgement was all he asked.
I know, literally. He's all loafed up on the bed right
So
now.
funny.
Um, okay. God, what were you saying? You were saying something about the exchange. And like, even if that means not being able to say or losing the opportunity to say whatever you were super excited about, like, because it makes space for the exchange, like the reciprocity, the conversation, like the collective energy that's being built. I love that. I love that so much. Yeah,
So
that's just
hard.
ugh. I remembered though what I wanted to say
Yay.
about understanding where people are coming from. I wanted to note that just because you're understanding where someone's coming from, just because you see where there may be hurt or there may be explanations to somebody's behaviors or whatever, that's not an excuse. Like, you don't have to be a pushover, and you also don't have to just, I guess, accept it for what it is. Like, you can ask to take up more space. You can ask them to let you finish your thought first. You can say, like, let's come back to this. Like, let's come back to this. Yeah. Or you can even just say, like, I wasn't done talking. I would like to finish my thought. It doesn't have to be mean. Like, setting a boundary and redirecting folks is not inherently unkind. And I just wanted to name that. Also, as a reminder to myself.
Yeah, do it because I know I can't speak for everybody, obviously, and I'm sure other people have all types of ways, depending on how people react to people putting in boundaries or conflict and stuff like that. But I think for me, um, I love when people spell things out for me. That's 100% the neurodivergence, but like, um, I love just knowing how people feel because I think it scares me when people don't share and then they build up a lot of resentment, and then it all can come out in like a very dramatic way. So I much prefer, I've definitely had friends in my 20s be like, hey, like you always interrupt me. And like that really upsets me. And that was like definitely a huge reckoning for me to understand, oh yeah, like I am taking up way too much space. I get too excited and I got to figure out ways to regulate myself so that I'm not negatively affecting like my friend's ability to show up. And that like it's okay that we show up differently and that like I can go out of my way to act in ways that are respectful of that, even if they're very like counter to my like nature or like, you know, what comes naturally to me. And I think it was like those times when my friends have had to say that, like some of the most like powerful like call-ins for me to grow as a person and as a friend. And like I've only ever been grateful for, you know, times when my friends have had to say something like that to me. Because I would so much rather know like where we all stand about stuff than for me to just keep yapping and think that it's okay. And oh yeah, they don't mind because I think that was my attitude when I was younger of like I remember I had a boyfriend and I asked him I would tend to ask all of my boyfriends. I'd be like, "Hey, like I talk a lot. Like is that a problem for you? Like because I can't stop, but like, you know, I think we should check in about that." And typically I would date, you know, quieter dudes who would be like, "No, like I really like listening to you," you know. And who knows if they really meant it or they were just saying that. I don't know, we were really
Yeah.
young. But it was always affirming to hear that. But I had one ex who was like, I always listened to the radio like growing up, like the little SF radio, the what's that? It's like the super leftist radio station in San Francisco in the Bay Area. I can't remember it, but he was like, we always had that on when I was a kid, and that's what you remind me of. And at the time, I was so flattered, but then I was like, okay, hold on. Wait, maybe that's not like A, a
Uh-huh.
compliment, and B, like something I want to aspire to be is like the background chatter to somebody's life. Like that's crazy. So, I think like being
Damn.
able to reflect on ways that people are receiving, you know, that like natural inclination of mine, has been really helpful for me to grow and be like, okay, I have agency over how I want to choose to show up. And as much as it's like had been difficult for me to like curb the impulse to just like blurt out everything I'm thinking all the time, I'm grateful for like the opportunity to like have a active role in shaping the person that I am and the person that I show up to be. And I think that's been one of the most empowering things about friendship for me is that like I think because people can hold up that mirror to you, it gives you an opportunity to say, is that the person I want to be? And if not, what are ways that I can support myself in being the person that I want to be and showing up in the way that I want to show up? And so I encourage you. I encourage you to share your boundaries. And like you said, they don't have to be rude, they don't have to be antagonistic, but I think calling people in and naming the way that you would like a friendship dynamic to be, or like naming a way that you feel like your needs are not being met in a friendship, like um depending on people's conflict resolution skills and inclination for self-reflection and all that kind of stuff, it can either go really well, or maybe it's just a sign that your needs are not being met in a certain friendship, and it's up to you to evaluate how you want to navigate that from there. But I think better to speak up than keep it inside.
Mhm. Yeah. My therapist, I wrote this down actually. Let me find it real
I love
quick.
that.
Um, yeah, I love what you're saying about like just normalize spelling it out for people. We really sometimes we just don't know, until we find out, until someone
Yeah.
calls us in about it. Um, but I was thinking about like maybe how I used to show up, where like I was expecting people to eventually realize that like maybe they're taking too much space, or maybe I'm not taking up enough space. Um, and my therapist said, shout out Francesca, she said expectations are premeditated resentments. And when she
Ooh.
said that, I'm like, damn, you hit that. Like you really did.
Ooh.
Because yeah, we really, people are not supposed to read our minds. Like, yeah, we have an obligation and responsibility to like self reflect and have some awareness of the environments and the people that we're with. And also, there's only so much that we can do with our own self reflection. And like, you might be harboring something that you've been annoyed with for like 3 years and you've never said it. So, like, how do you expect things to change if clearly maybe the other parties involved just don't have the awareness that it's an issue at all? So, you can't expect people to do anything really, but like the expectations that you're setting, the unsaid expectations, especially, you're just kind of setting yourself up to feel resentment towards people that you love and care about. And what a journey.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful thing to think about. And I also think in a lot of relational dynamics, we aren't really taught how to handle uncomfortable things in friendships. I think it's definitely a learned skill, and if we never really practiced it, or we were never successful at practicing it, then it can seem really scary to be the person in your friend group or in that friendship to be the one that sets that kind of precedent of like, hey, like I'm gonna be the first one to like speak up instead of being passive aggressive, instead of, just ending a friendship, instead of ghosting, like to be like, hey, no, like I'm invested. And that's the thing that I think too, that something that I think like social justice, like philosophy, or like, yeah, I guess philosophy would be the right word, but like the kind of mentality required to be in social justice spaces is one that's like, a, intent is not as important as impact, right? So a lot of times, especially in my manifestation workshops, I talk about the importance of intentions and how we set intentions, and intentions are something that are very important to us, but intentions are much less important to other people. What's really important to our relationships is the impact that we have on them. And so like um being able to like learn, like be in the weeds with something, and trusting that like, you know, what's more important is to be like accepting of the fact that to have a relationship, like calling somebody in is an act of care, right? It's an act of like, I want this relationship to thrive and I want it to uh, be a part of my life. It's a priority for me. And therefore, I need this need to be at least talked about for me to like make that happen. And so I think it can be scary whether you're on the receiving end of something like that. It can be super activating to be navigating conflict, whether you're the one initiating the conflict or you're the one having somebody initiate it with you. Um, Especially if you have no experience with it or you don't have any successful experiences with it. I think um But I think that that's not a reason not to try. And that's not a reason not to um trust in the mentality that like being able to speak up on your needs and being able to listen when other people share their needs is a sign of like somebody's belief in the relationship as opposed to somebody's lack of belief in the relationship. And I think that's true of romantic partnerships as well. I think that's a really common dynamic of people where like, oh, I didn't realize it was that big of a deal. And it was like, ooh, ooh, well. So yeah, that ability to like listen to other people's needs and also be brave enough to and also I think like and I think so much of the conversation that we're having today about friendship is like understanding that like so much of friendship takes self-awareness, I think is really a takeaway from everything we're talking about in terms of examples of like you should be self-aware to think about what kind of space are you taking up in conversations. You know, you should be self-aware to think what is the impact of the way that I show up in my relationships. You know, the self-awareness to say, okay, like I'm super activated by this thing that my friend is sharing with me and I'm very uncomfortable and maybe I'm even mad. Like maybe I feel really attacked and I feel on the defensive. um so I think so much of like navigating the shadow that our relationships can bring up within us or navigating conflicts that relationships can have in order to strengthen them, like it requires us to be able to not only identify what we're feeling and identify what we're going through, but to be able to say, okay, like me being activated doesn't negate that this is important to my friend.
Yeah.
um and how do you like take care of yourself through that? So I know for me, like when people bring stuff like that up with me of like, hey, like you interrupted me a lot, the first thing I feel is super like guilty and I feel ashamed. I'm like, oh my God, like I care about you. That's the last thing I would ever want to do is make you feel like that. Um, but then it's like in the context of that conversation, it's really important that I don't make the response to that conversation about my feelings because that conversation is not about my feelings. That conversation is about me like having caused harm in a friendship. And
Right.
so I say, okay, I gotta process my feelings. Like I gotta handle this. But right now I'm just gonna listen. And you know, sometimes I've had to be like, hey, like I hear you, but like, can I just like take some time to think about this because I'm activated. You know what I mean? And I can't like resolve what they're, you know, adequately like being able to address it. Um, and so I'll be like, hey, like, can I come check in with you again when I'm like processed? And I really work hard to make sure I follow through on that. But I think it's so important to like understand that being able to navigate conflict or navigate the shadow side that can come up with our friendships is so much of that is about self-awareness and like managing our own reactions and our own sense of self. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I think it also, in addition to self-awareness, well, okay, first, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I have definitely been in many situations where, and I'm sure many of us have been in situations where, like, one, it takes sometimes so much effort to call someone in and say, what you did upset me and hurt me. And then to have someone respond with a little defensiveness where they're immediately wanting to give an explanation of why that happened, why they showed up that way, instead of, you know, keeping the focus on you and what you're bringing up.
Does not help.
No, it does not help. Like I understand. I understand. It's the intention. It's assuming best intentions and addressing the impact. Um I think the feelings that we get when someone calls us in and that need to, maybe not even a need, but maybe it's a compulsion of wanting to defend yourself, wanting to defend your intention, wanting to explain. I think those are opportunities to acknowledge, I don't know, what we would call our shadow selves, like the guilt, the shame, the maybe anger, defensiveness, and everything that comes up. I feel like we never want to hurt people. Some people have the intention of hurting people.
I was
That's for
gonna say
that, like
some of
that
us.
Some of us, maybe the people on this podcast
Yeah.
who are listening to this podcast, like don't want to hurt people.
Right. Well, us
And
and our bleeding hearts.
yes. Um, but it's hard. It's hard to know that we've hurt someone or that we harmed someone. But these are, like you said, opportunities to repair. These are um moments to express love and gratitude and also like confidence, hopefully confidence, or if not, like hope for the friendship or the relationship or whatever it is. Yeah.
I think for me, if I'll give like some brief examples of like the idea of navigating conflict in my friendships is something that's relatively new for me. I grew up in a very waspy suburb, and I honestly think that money buys you out of having to navigate a lot of conflicts. And whiteness will buy you out of not having to navigate a lot of conflict. And so there isn't really a cultural competency in the spaces that I grew up in that like made people used to conflict. It was definitely something that was very villainized, and you were kind of perceived as the bad guy for being the aggressor, and then add to that being, I'm brown and all that. So, um, I was always very like when it comes to my needs getting met, I would assume that if I spoke up, especially about really serious stuff, that I was going to lose the friendships. And so I never did. And it kind of reached a breaking point where I was like, I'm no longer willing to trade off access to people I consider my best friends in exchange for denying like my needs anymore. And so I started, naming that. And of course, uh, having built up years of my needs not being met, to put that on somebody is overwhelming. And to especially put that on somebody with no, background experience of navigating conflict, obviously didn't go well. And so, those friendships ended as a result of us not being able to come to a what I felt was fair level of acknowledgement and respect for my needs. But then I've also had experiences where, like, even within the same friend group of like who was like left in my friendships after those kind of conflicts dissolved some friendships. If I, got into a fight with them, if we had disagreements, we were able to um, realize what was unsustainable about our friendship. And we were able to say, okay, we have to relate differently. And it's terrifying. And I think it left me really anxious for quite a while. But I think ultimately I had trust and faith that like me and this person had been friends for so long. We survived a whole friendship blowing, like a whole friendship circle blowing up. And like I could trust that even though the way that we showed up for each other changed as a result of needing it to be more sustainable to meet each of our needs and like the ways that we like differed as people. Um, but this new way that we were showing up, like it didn't lessen the strength of our friendship. And in fact, I think that it strengthened our friendship to be able to know that like we could imperfectly handle conflict, and we could have our emotions be very present as a part of it, and we could uh just like suck at it and suck at it together and still come to a really, really productive conclusion that made us relate to each other in ways that were not going to build up resentment. And so it was a real roller coaster, especially for me emotionally, for like a long time. But I think ultimately the reminder that like she never stopped showing up, I never stopped showing up. There was a commitment to each other of like, yeah, we do love each other. Like we're just learning how to love each other in ways that were like healthy for both of us. And so I'm like so grateful for that experience because I think it taught me, it reinforced me that yeah, like, I can say my needs. I can also just be imperfect. I can show up imperfectly and very emotionally reactive and charged in a friendship, and it doesn't mean that it's going to end. And in fact, it really only means that I get my needs met. And that's been so powerful for me to learn. So I really encourage people, I think coming at it from the intention and also naming your intentions, I think, to be like, hey, like, you know, um, the reason I'm saying this is because I care about our friendship. And I know that after years of being friends with you, like, I trust that like we are invested in each other and we are invested in each other's well-being, and maybe there's ways that we can invest in each other that don't produce XYZ feelings, or XYZ resentment, whatever. Um, like really naming those things, I think can go a long way. Because I think a lot of times those things aren't said. And so when they're not said, people are operating off their own assumptions. And yeah, so it's like I just really want to encourage people who don't have familiarity with conflict, or who have very comfortable experience of like conflict never working out. Like never finding resolution, and really just associating conflict with like the ending of something as opposed to um the beginning of something even more beautiful or more healthy, or more fulfilling. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm really resonating about what you said, where sometimes conflict has just meant this is the end. Sometimes we don't rock the boat. Sometimes we don't say anything because, as dysfunctional as it is, or as uncomfortable as the situation is, it means that we keep somebody that we care about. Yeah, but it's not
Oh,
sustainable. Like
yeah.
these resentments, oh my God, there's so much I want to say about this, but I'll save it for another day. I don't want to.
That's fair.
But thank you for saying all that, pal.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I do want to say one more thing before we go into our questions. Um, Friendships are such a beautiful way to try new things in terms of communication,
Mhm.
and like relationships too. Like me and my spouse, since the very beginning, we would say we can do things differently. Like we can do things differently than what we were taught, what was modeled for us, what we were practicing for so long, coming from a place of just survival mode. Um, but when you have people you trust and people you care about and people who care about you, yeah, that is healing. It is so healing to be able to say, and do it imperfectly, like to like release the pressure of having to package what you say in an airtight, like non, I don't say
Threatening.
non-offendable, but like
Yeah.
yeah, like I think I've had friendships and relationships, specifically with like Shroot's mortal enemy. Like I remember we got into so many discussions. Um, and I remember practicing for them. I
Mm.
remember writing out everything I needed to say and practicing the tone and
Not the
like,
scripting.
yes, like really being able to
Yeah.
make sure that I'm practicing it so that it is perfect, non-threatening. There are no like like it's airtight, like, but it really takes the vulnerability out of it. And I know that I did that just because it was a really toxic relationship.
You weren't
And
feeling heard anyway, so.
yeah, it doesn't matter how I was going to show up, like I was going to get invalidated.
Mhm.
Um, but I realized just in other friendships, I would do that. And it made me realize I'm coming into opportunities to be vulnerable with like big defenses up. Like I don't even want to hear what you have to say back. I just want you to listen to me and then do something different. But like that that's not
Mhm.
fair. That's not reciprocal. Um yeah, I don't know if that was like a fully like thought out thing, but those are things that I wanted to bring in, that you can do things differently, especially when you feel safe to do so. Even if like your body doesn't feel safe to do so, but like your mind is like, no, you are safe. It is okay. Those, yeah, take advantage of the opportunity to do things differently when the conditions allow for it. Yeah.
That's so powerful. I totally agree of the idea of I want to package it and I want to just be listened to and I want things to change. And there's no, that's totally the first one that I described of things falling apart. That's completely what I did. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize that yeah, that's not sustainable, but just so much had built up that like I didn't really feel like there was any other way to go about it. But yeah, definitely a lesson learned for going forward of like, yeah, okay. The vulnerability is, I think, the point in friendships, especially friendships that have like intimacy, that are emotionally invested. Like there's an emotional investment and not just like, oh yeah, these are the people that I go out with every now and then. Like, if you want like a deepening of a relationship, then yeah, you have to be willing to, it's your little pound of flesh. You guys both have to put it on the table. And it's worth it. It's so worth it. So,
And if it's not, then that's it.
boy, bye. Boy, bye. Middle fingers up. Anyway, um, okay. Yeah. How are we feeling about our audience questions? They're so juicy.
I know I feel good about them. Okay. I can read the first one.
Yeah, please.
Folks, um, these are some questions from our like previous episode that we didn't get to fully get to go into, but they're so good and so real. And honestly, I don't even know the answers to these. I might have to pull a card as a cop
Yeah,
out.
that counts. That totally is a point of reflection.
Okay, so the first question we have is if you get into a fight with a friend, oh, maybe we just answered
I
this.
know, yeah.
Okay, if you get into a fight with a
Oh, we
friend,
did.
how can you approach it and save the friendship? Please see above.
Yeah, we kind of crushed that. Definitely like state your intentions, I think. And hold space for it to get messy. And uh see above. Kind of all the details that we covered because we unpacked that. I'm glad
The
we did.
aforementioned yapping.
Yeah.
I think what I want to bring in is take time to decide whether it's actually a friendship that you want to save. Because for me, when there's conflict, I fawn and then I do all this work to try to repair a friendship that I actually really don't want. Like,
Mm.
this friendship stresses me out. Maybe I don't really trust the person that I'm like friends with, or for whatever reason, like it could just be a blessing in disguise. Like it could just be life weeding out people who are no longer meant to be in your life. Yeah. So think about that. You may not even want to be friends with this person. And if that's the case, use that as the base to figure out how you want to move forward. Yeah.
I think that's so powerful. And I think in my experience, just because you want to be friends with this person and just because you want things to move forward and you want to resolve the conflict, I think it's also important to take a step back and really assess things for what they are. Do you feel heard by this person? Do you feel like this person has the capacity to support you in the way that you want to be supported? Do they want to? Do they show that with their actions? And is there conversations that you can have about the way that their actions make you feel? Are they receptive to those types of conversations? And um, really try to find a balance between what you want, but also being honest about what's possible. Like honest with yourself about what's possible. Um, and I also don't think that that's like a solo project necessarily to like assess the situation because we're biased, right? Everybody's biased. But I think it can be helpful to like check in with that person and be like, I think another Brene Brown, and maybe I said this in the last one, I can't remember, but the language that she used that I thought was so powerful was the story I'm making up in my head. So what she tells her partner is the story I'm making up in my head is that you're doing XYZ, and that's how that's making me feel. And her partner will be like, oh, well, the story I'm making up in my head is that you don't care because da, 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 da. Like, so like understanding that like when you kind of phrase language like that, it's making it clear that like we all have our own perceptions of what's going on, based on the information we're taking in and the context that we're placing it into. And maybe you are not reading the situation for what it is. And so I think that figuring out the reality of the situation is a group project to a certain extent. So to really include the other person in that. And so if you struggle to figure out how to do that, try to be like, hey, like, can we just try this exercise of like sharing how, what we think to be true and saying it through the lens of the story I'm making up in my head is, and then this is what I think is true. So that gives room for the other person to be like, well, actually, here's what's going on with me when we have that problem or whatever. Yeah,
Beautiful.
I love it. And this is just inherently a messy process. Like there's no, as Libras, we're like, where's the bow that we can tie on this to make it pretty? There's no bow. It doesn't exist. So,
It's just packaged in newspaper.
yeah, with heart. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Eh,
All
You
right,
ready?
second question.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a ghoster. Sometimes I get conflicting feelings about being friends with someone. I feel like I am able to support people and hold space for them, but I don't necessarily want or feel comfortable sharing parts of myself with them. It feels one sided, and I find myself feeling bad about it sometimes. Any advice? True?
That's funny. I literally covered this in a reading this year. So it's like kind of a fresh topic for me. But like Um, I think it depends on what you want out of that friendship, and also it's worth reflecting on what you're getting out of that friendship because I think for a lot of us, especially if you're a Bleeding Hearts Club, like if you're interested in this podcast, it wouldn't surprise me if you can, to a certain extent, fall into this category of um, a lot of us have learned to associate our worth with being needed. And so like we have a familiarity and we take on a pattern where we allow ourselves to become needed and especially in relationships, but we do not allow ourselves to need. Um, and I think like there are certain relationships that we form with people where the dynamic is that we have, in terms of like emotional support or vulnerability or intimacy, we know what we want to offer them, but we don't necessarily know what they can offer us. And just based on what we get out of those relationships, we don't feel fulfilled emotionally enough to want to share and be intimate in that way. And I think that if you are one of those people that finds yourselves in a lot of dynamics where they need you and you're happy to feel needed, and that's what's fulfilling to you about the relationship is being needed, um, like how like if it's leaving you feeling bad about it, like how sustainable is that relationship really? And what does it look like to seek out relationships with people where um like I think it's really healthy to have relationships where yeah, maybe you are the person that's needed, and it does fulfill a certain level of like worthiness within you and all that kind of stuff. But then what does it look like to be in a relationship where that person doesn't need a damn thing from you? Like, what does that feel like? What does that look like? And in fact, maybe you need them. Like, where you're on the other side of it. I know for me, that's the friendship in my life that has taught me like 100% the most. Like, because I'm definitely the person where I position myself to be the one that, like, yeah, I would emotionally process and I would externally process with my friends, but I was definitely always the person that people came to in a crisis. Like, I was always the one that was like, yeah, I can help you put out this fire. Like, I got it. Like, I know exactly how to navigate that. That's low key why I'm in the job I'm in. Because I'm really good at that. But it was like I never felt like if I had a fire that needed to be put out, these people couldn't help me with that. And to a certain extent, I think that built a little bit of resentment where I felt like my needs weren't being met. My needs weren't being met in these friendships, but I felt like their needs were being met, and that didn't feel fair to me. But then I became friends with somebody who did not need anything from me, didn't really have like is like the smartest person I know. Like I don't really feel like I've taught her anything. And which it doesn't really matter one way or the other, but I'm just, naming my perspective on this, where it was like all the typical ways that I showed up in friendship. were flipped completely. And it was me who needed this person like super deeply. And I remember in a conversation with each other, we were talking about this, and I remember asking her, I was like, then how do I show up in this friendship, you know? And she was just like, I just want your presence. I'm just
Mhm.
happy to have you. Like, and I think that was so life-changing for me to understand that, like, friendships don't always have to be about needs.
Mhm.
What? That friendship could just be about shared presence. And um that that was something that was valuable, like my presence. I never really had considered that before this friendship, that it didn't the value that I had in terms of what I could give to my friends, it didn't have to be saving them. It didn't have to be them needing me. It could just be we appreciate each other's presence. And that could foster like a deep and emotionally like fulfilling connection. Like it doesn't have to be based on need. So that's what I would say.
That's beautiful. That's so sweet.
I love friendship.
Me too.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I think what comes to mind for me is like, one, I think about how I would want someone to basically tell me or not tell me that they are not interested in having a friendship with me. I don't think I've ever done that. Like, I don't think
Mm,
I have ever said, like, I'm not really feeling the vibe of this friendship. You know, I've definitely said that to people who were romantically interested in me,
mm,
and that was a little easier. But like, I think, I don't, I feel like when I'm needed or when I can sense that someone wants to be friends with me because they want something from me, it activates something in me. Like, everybody in my life wants something from me. And we have this podcast because we give so much of ourselves. And like, yeah, that's probably why I am a therapist. That's
mm,
probably why I am a social worker and a death doula and a tarot reader and a Reiki master and all of these things. But like, those are things that I get to do on my terms
mm,
with my boundaries and my parameters. But like, when it comes to the people, just regular people in my life who like make up my world, my little microcosm, I don't know. Like, this is the one that stumps me because in the past, I'm like, I'm just not going to respond to your texts. How do I tell you that the way that you are activates something in me? And like, sure, we can say, like, oh, do your shadow work, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, we said that earlier, but like, this is different. Like, it's not different. It's in the same vein, but like, you have a choice. Like, with everybody in your life, I'm sure there are nuances, but like you have a choice whether or not you want them to have access to you, whether or not you want to be in like community or relationship with them. Like that requires your consent, like to some degree. And when it comes to people who I like, it's a partnership. Like it really is a partnership, a union. It is an exchange of energy and time and love and care. And if like, I don't know, I don't know how to like talk. I'm not that I don't know how to talk about it, but I just like, this is where my little Libra comes in. That I was just like, I'm just not going to talk to you anymore. I'm just going to like slowly back into the darkness and hope that you don't notice.
mm. Yeah, I don't think that there's any like inherently right or wrong answer in these cases. But I think maybe something that can be helpful, something that I'm learning, but again, this friend who teaches me everything, that she's taught me in a big way, is that like it's okay to stay friends with somebody and just change the dynamic, you know? Or like change what the friendship like the level of closeness, you know what I mean? Like, so like I've had situations where if I said, okay, I'm disrupting this pattern of like being needed, and maybe I don't necessarily want to feel like I can open up to this other friend, but I don't necessarily want to cut them off and be like, all right, because I am a ghoster in certain respects, but I am also a blocker. Like I will send you a message and I will block your ass. Like ooh. The Scorpio is a little loud. So, um, if I don't want to, I'm learning, maybe there are other tools in the toolkit. I don't have to always go to the cut people off kind of strategy. And so I'm learning, like, if somebody comes to me with that need, to be able to, like, damn, that's crazy. Like, that's what my friend has taught me. Sometimes the situation, all I need is a little damn, that's crazy. Like, and to just change the pattern, basically. Like, there's this, phrase I came up with. Now I gotta pull out my phone. To quote my freaking self. I keep it on my Twitter because I always bring it up and I can't just like say it by heart. But the best way to disrupt entrenched systems, whether they be structural forces or within your own bodily responses to your individual life, is to tirelessly commit to choose to do something different. So it's like when it comes to these dynamics where maybe you don't want to feel so needed by this person, but you also don't want to cut them off, but maybe you also don't want to ghost them, but you also don't want to like be besties with them. So it's like, okay, maybe you can change the tonal and your tonal approach as well as the content that you kind of say what you say. You can, you know, um, not be setting yourself up to constantly be the person that they come to with these things. And that like it's I think up to us to determine what our responsibility is to each person that we're interacting with. And I don't think that it's fair to set yourself up to be like responsible for like saving other people or for other people needing you to process, and like how I was saying, like with my own situation where like it wasn't fair of me to put that on my friends. I had to learn on my own, like I'm not going to find fulfillment in looking for that externally. Like I need to build out my own support team, and I need to build out like me being in the driver's seat of like, yeah, okay, I'm going through this, so I'm going to book an energy session with Stevie and I'm going to work on Reiki with Stevie, and maybe I'll do a session with Stevie where they pull tarot for me, and maybe I'll talk to a therapist. Like, so I'm taking charge of how I'm processing this thing. I'm not just running to my friends and being like, I'm dumping on you. Now what? Like, so yeah. So sometimes you gotta hit him with the damn, that's crazy. That's what my friend always says to me. And I think, um, it's a lesson I'm trying to learn. I wouldn't say that I have it all figured out yet, but I'm taking the baby steps in that direction. And I think that it has been so much more of a weight off my shoulders than the drama of cutting somebody off or the almost like guilt and unresolved energy of ghosting somebody. Ooh, that's a tough one.
Okay, I feel like this is a good segue in
Yeah.
question, which really feels like, kind of a reflection of everything that we've been talking about. Um, okay. How might I know if it's time to end a friendship instead of trying to repair or address potential harm? Trust issues or trusting my gut? Do you have any advice on how to figure out when it's a trauma response versus intuition? Sometimes I get an off feeling about someone and it's hard to figure out why. Down the line, I might find out more information about them that confirms my suspicions, but I don't want to be too quick to assume. Help, crying face.
Help.
um, you and I just laughed in like unison. I know that we were both about to exhale, but we just held it because it was just going to be too much. I just wanted to name that. Um, yeah, I think I'm learning about the vagus nerve.
Hmm.
Um,
Love the vagus nerve.
and I can't speak too much about it because I'm not an expert and I'm not gonna
I
fabricate
can. I got
my
you. Yeah,
knowledge.
I got you. I'm very well acquainted. Me and
But
my PTSD.
I think something is telling me to say, like, as you're thinking about this and as you're contemplating and reflecting on your interactions with somebody, or yeah, hold on, it's all coming to me right now. As you're reflecting on these interactions, try to do so in a way where your nervous system feels, I guess, calmer. I know it's hard to calm our nervous system any given moment of time, but if you are reflecting and you're feeling activated, like actively activated, actively feeling like you're unsafe, it's going to be hard for you to make a decision with clarity. It's going to be hard for you to reflect on what's happening with clarity and groundedness. And your survival instinct is going to kick in. You don't like it, like it makes you feel uncomfortable, you're going to want to freeze or fight or flee. Um, so I think bringing your body to a place that feels safe as it can, as grounded as it can, as calm as it can, and just thinking about it from that place, I think that is going to be my advice because, yeah, I think what I'm hearing from this question too is like, it's that feeling of like, I don't want to ghost you, or I don't want to, this is my intention and this is my explanation, but like, I don't feel comfortable or safe enough to express that to the other person. Um, and honestly, if you have to ghost them, if you have to like leave this a loose end, sometimes that's just necessary. Sometimes, like, yes, the other person is going to create a narrative about you based on their personal experience in this situation. And you just have to decenter yourself from that narrative. And that's hard. I'm a Libra. I want people to think I'm perfect and that
Mm-hmm.
nothing's wrong with me and that I'm so nice and that,
Because you
you
are.
know, yeah, I just want people to think that. And I know that, like, what other people think of me is truly, it has nothing to do with me. I mean, in some ways, it has something to do with me, but like, that's them and that's their experience and that's their perception and that's their truth. It has nothing to do with my truth, my perception, my experience. And I think that is, from what I'm hearing in these last two questions, like, how do we do this in a way where like I don't look like the bad guy or that like people aren't going to create these what is it, perceptions of me, or that this reputation that's built out of this about me. Like, you are a multi-dimensional person. People are going to have thoughts and feelings about you that like really, it's one dimension. It's not your whole self. It might not even be true at all. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that there.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like, to what you're saying, it's not really to the question, but I think it's important to learn how to be the villain in other people's stories sometimes, especially as a Libra. Like, what does it look like to accept that you are not the hero in everybody? In fact, it would be like you're not a human. To be a human being is to mean that you are not the hero in everybody's story. So there's that, but that's not really to the question. I think what I would say to the question, something that's helped me because I struggle with this big time. Um, but I think in the last couple years, something I've noticed when it came time to end friendships was I think sometimes people show a version of themselves to me to a certain extent where I feel like they're on their best behavior. And when they're on their best behavior with me, it becomes really hard to be like, I can justify ending things because they didn't do anything wrong to me, you know? Um, but I think what's been really helpful is paying attention to how they treat other people. And I know people say pay attention to how they treat the waiter, all that kind of stuff. But I also don't think it's just that. Like, I think there are people who have the ethos of, yeah, I will be really polite to service workers. I will be really kind to people who I am in positions of power over. But, like, you know, there are certain people that I consider beneath me. And maybe it's not within the hierarchy that we see in society, but they have their own measure of that. And they're callous to those people. They're cruel to those people. And then, you can see that, if you pay attention to, what are the ways that they talk about other people? What are the ways that they treat other people? I think what I can find in a lot of um, women or people who were socialized to be women, regardless of gender, like, um, sometimes the way they treat men. And I'm the last, like, that's my biggest pet peeve is when non-cis men make me defend, like, don't make me do that. Like, don't put me in a position where I'm having to defend a cis man. Like, that's, that sickens me a little bit. But it's also like, men are people too. And like, how do you treat a man that you think is beneath you? And, maybe didn't necessarily even do anything to you. Like, obviously I'm not talking about all the reasons to on a man. I understand. I'm first in line, I promise. But like I've had so many friendships where it was like, oh, you need to respect just the humanity of another person who didn't do and like didn't hurt you in this way, like who doesn't deserve the way that you're treating them. Like, so I think that might be a good thing to look at as well. Because I think that that has taught me, like, it has filled out the picture of the person that I'm, wondering whether I should continue their friendship, and it's given me clarity on like, um, oh yeah, I don't like they never show that side of themselves to me, but that's who they are with other people, and I don't know how comfortable I am with that. So that's been really helpful for me. Um, if you can get yourself a friend with a lot of eighth house placements astrologically, I have a best friend who has a Taurus stellium in her eighth house, and the way people switch up, like the way they act in front of me versus the way they act in front of her is such a market, especially when they're alone with her. And she's my best friend. She's gonna tell me, So it's like I've definitely had it's been multiple instances throughout the course of our friendship where I thought something about somebody and I really admired them and I really liked them. And then like the way that they revealed themselves, a version of themselves to my friend that I was like, oh my God, that goes against so many of my values and I'm very uncomfortable by that. So that's what I would, this is all so relative. And the piece about trust issues versus trusting your gut, fear versus intuition, like all those things are really difficult to name. And I think give yourself the opportunity to reflect on these things in hindsight. And yeah, those I hope are two angles that you can approach this from. We don't have like there's no clear-cut answers, what I'm trying to say. It's all relative. So
For real. Damn, that's crazy.
I love it. So those were our audience questions. Thanks so much for writing in. If you would like to see your question featured on our podcast, if you'd like to hear us yap about it, go ahead and email us at bleedingheartsclub.pod@gmail.com. You can find the email in our show notes. You can ask anything general, you can ask anything specific. You can even ask a question and include that you want Stevie to pull some tarot about it, or you can include your birth information. That would be your birth date, month, day, year, time, AM, PM, as close to accurate as you have it. If you don't have the exact time, please let me know. Within a 2-hour range is ideal. And then city and either country or state. So yeah, if you include those things, I'll include like a little mini reading for you and Stevie will pull some tarot for you. So definitely check out our email. Please respond. We'd love to even hear your thoughts about anything we're sharing or any questions that come up as a result. So yay. All right. What's the tarot, Stevie?
Oh gosh, there's so much. I will say that when I started pulling the cards, so many just jumped out. And then I was like, okay, cards, we don't have that much time actually. But I kept four. The first one is Queen of Swords
Do you
reversed.
want to
I'll
share
just,
which deck you're using first?
oh yeah, I
Yeah,
was just,
love this deck.
I am using the Marigold Tarot deck from Amrit Brar. I think you can get it at 13th Press. I
.com.
think, yeah, dot
Yep.
com. My first tarot deck. I love this so much. Shroot has the same one. Um, yeah, she's everything to me.
Me too. Me too.
Good so but here's what it looks like, I guess, for the folks who are watching.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
is a skeleton holding up a sword, and I think she's like using it to clear out some flora and fauna, but we got it reversed. And then we have
that's
the
the
Three of
Queen of
Cups.
Swords, right?
Yeah, Queen of Swords reversed.
Reverse.
No, yes. And then we have Three of Cups, which is three skulls with the tops sliced off. There are two at top, and they are pouring into the one on the bottom that has a beautiful little sunflower and some other foliage. And then we have the Ten of Swords reversed, and that is a skull just being sliced. Maybe not sliced, but there are 10
Weird.
swords through it. Yeah, pierced, penetrated, all of those things. And then, of course, we have the Queen of Rings. And it's just a lady holding up a ring up above her head. So gorgeous. And that is upright. So I'll get into this now. I'm really curious as to what people are going through when they're listening to this episode. Um, y'all are going through it, I fear. I'm sure we all are. The Queen of, do I have hair? Yes, I do have hair in my face. The Queen of Swords reversed. The energy of it is like thinking too much with your heart, being overly emotional, easily influenced, easily swayed, because you're not basing your, I don't want to say basing your reality in objectivity, because I think it's just, that's just not it. Um, I'm getting the sense, I don't know if you can hear my
Mm-mm.
dog
You're
back.
good. The little animal
Okay.
farm behind you is
I know.
not present with us. It's just a you
Everyone
problem.
I
Oh, there we go. Hi, Luna.
it's a silly goose. For everybody who doesn't know, I have three cats and a dog.
Yep.
There's just a lot going on there. Um okay, the energy of being just easily swayed. I feel like
Sorry, I
I
got
hear
it.
so much freaking Luna. Sorry, everybody.
We're going through it. It's fine.
Oh, God. She also doesn't want me to be great.
Yeah.
She doesn't want me to be the leader
You
she
know
knows I
what's
am.
funny?
But
Remember how you said Leo quieted down when you started talking about Leo placements?
yeah,
Luna, we're talking about Cancer season. This is a Cancer card. Luna said,
my
I'm here too.
really is. Luna.
That's funny.
So cute though. I do love her a lot. She just drives me cuckoo bananas
Mm.
whenever her owner leaves the house.
Yep. As dogs
Okay.
do.
Yeah. As yeah, as they should.
Mhm.
Come on to be calm and comfortable.
Mm.
Okay. Anyway, I get the sense that there's a decision that has to be made, and it's like almost having breakup goggles. Like in just on a day to day, like you see, this is wrong. This is not helpful. This is not healthy. It's not sustainable. But then when it comes to actually thinking about like making a decision that can potentially end whatever the situation is, all of a sudden it's like there's all this nuance getting in the way, like the what ifs, the potential of the situation, the person changing just the slightest bit that makes you think that, oh, maybe I'm actually not giving this a fair chance. Maybe, X, Y, and Z, and it's not really grounded in the reality of what is happening right now and what history has demonstrated. And so it's like this energy of being swept up by the emotions. Like you can't make a decision because you're feeling so ungrounded, and you're going to be swayed, or maybe you are already swayed by like just the different bits of information that you're getting. Like if you're thinking about breaking up with someone, and like when you're not with them, you might have all this clarity of like, this isn't healthy and I don't want to be with this person, and like this just isn't healthy and I haven't been happy for a long time. But then you're with that person, and then all of a sudden they're like, I got you a cookie because you said that you have been wanting cookies lately. And then all of a sudden it's like, they do understand me, they do care about me, and maybe I'm not giving them a fair chance. And I'm definitely speaking from experience,
Been
not
there
like
too.
in my current situation, but like this is the energy that it reminds me of. Like just yeah, just really being torn between head and heart. Um and not wanting to make a decision, or not wanting to be the one to say the decision out loud or bring it up, because like as unstable as this is, you're comfortable with it. You can kind of anticipate, what the ups and downs are going to be. And you don't want to rock the boat. My I guess this would comes back to like one of the earlier questions about how do I know if it's time to end a friendship?
Mhm.
And I will say again, just like make sure that you are as grounded as you possibly can be. Like literally taking care of your nervous system. If you have to hum, if you have to sing a song, if you have to rock your body, like if you have to take a cold shower and reflect on what the situation is, and like use that as the foundation on which you're reflecting and making decisions based off of, I would say do that. That is my suggestion. Feeling overwhelmed, because a part of me wanted to say too, like, reach out to other people. They may be grounding. But like, I also think that sometimes getting so many opinions is not helpful, because you trust other people and their judgments and you don't trust yourself, or maybe you're hearing conflicting things because everybody is giving advice from what they hope they would do in that situation, not necessarily what they would actually do in that situation. Um, so I can also see people just shutting people out and being isolated and like not wanting to be needed. Like, don't even talk to me. I don't have the space. Like, I get the sense of like compassion fatigue as well. Like, you've just run out of capacity to be there for yourself and other people. And it's just creating this big pit where you don't want to make any decisions. You don't want to think about it. You don't want to think about what other people need, how they're going to respond. And I just feel like this little tornado of emotions. Maybe not even little tornado, but just like a big tornado. Everything's just flying around. Um, but the things that stay put are the things that are grounded. Um, I also get the sense that like in shutting people out or isolating yourself, it may come off as cold-hearted, because that's just what you have to do. I don't think being cold hearted is a bad thing. I think it's a way that people have practiced putting themselves first. So maybe that is the energy of putting yourself first, putting your needs first, making decisions that best serve you and align with your values first. Like maybe that is what needs to be called in right now, as everything is just, I just see people getting pulled in so many different directions. And I'm going to leave that there and see what the Astro says.
Yeah. So Cancer season. Ooh. I have another um thing that I want to start with. I think I might have said this in the last episode, but I think it bears repeating. So I'm gonna repeat myself. Um, Hopefully I can find it quickly. I have a feeling I can't. Just awful. Okay. So the biggest kind of transit that I think is shaping the overwhelming feeling that you're talking about, that feeling of being pulled in all these different directions, is Jupiter in the sky has moved into Gemini. And it will be in Gemini for the next year. So I think about like 10 months or so like left. And Jupiter is like it rules like our kind of like philosophy, our worldly view on things, our like, the knowledge that we've experienced, like the knowledge that we've produced, as well as the experience that we've garnered, and then that knowledge and experience combo producing the wisdom that we possess, or our ability to engage with the wisdom of other people. Those are all Jupiterian concepts. And Jupiter, uh, like is not comfortable in the sign of Gemini. So as a result, what this transit that we will kind of spend the next year in is it looks like a floodgate of new connections opening, but having none of the larger context or information necessary to logically navigate or make decisions. There's so much frustration and misdirection during this transit, especially for Gemini placements, because Jupiter in Gemini forces us to learn by doing instead of by communicating and observing like Gemini would prefer. So there is a sense of like hashtag just do it that meets this transit, but there's also a sense of like because it's such kind of like a watery and airy time, it's Cancer Sun, Cancer Venus, but then we've also got the Jupiter in Gemini. I think it's really important to find ways to anchor ourselves, like Stevie said, like, what is not getting swept up in this tornado is what is kind of anchored to the ground. So really allowing this Mars and Taurus to help us discover like what are we rooted to, and what kind of can hold us down. And I think that it's worth considering as we kind of move from Cancer season to Leo season, thinking and as I think Mercury's in Leo right now, and Venus will quickly move into Leo by the 11th of July. And so it's like, where can we anchor into ourselves? Specifically, and I think that really translates to what we talked about in this episode of like, how do you find the anchor in yourself and how do you root into yourself as a way to stay grounded in the face of, changing relationships or being pulled in so many different directions? Like, how can you find that within yourself? So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Intense.
Cancer season. Okay. You ready for the next one? It's such
Oh
a
yeah.
trip. Three of Cups. Like, I just think this is such a polar opposite transition from the first card. But the next one is Three of Cups. And that is the card about like happiness and celebration and really cherishing the people that are in your life. Um, I feel like the chaos of the first card is like it's chaos and things are going to get weeded out. Things are going to get released. You're going to make more space. Um, and then what you're left with are people and things that like they're just down for you. Like they are your ride or dies. Like amidst chaos, you really see who's in your court. You really see who shows up for you. You really see who cares for you. Like who is meeting you with tenderness and not just abandoning you. And I think whoever's left, like I see you, I see us really looking to them with gratitude and just like damn, thank God, thank the universe, thank our commitment to each other, our commitment to caring for each other, for like being something that lasts amidst chaos. So I see just like time being spent celebrating each other, celebrating your friendships, um, and just making decisions that bring you in closer alignment to yourself and the life that you want to live and the microcosm and world that you want to create with other people. Um, so I wrote like, come back to the people who see you and ground you after you break up. But like, breakup can mean anything. Like I think about people who get so like absorbed by their romantic partnerships. And when they break up, like they still have those friends that they can come back to and be like, I'm so sorry, I lost myself. And they will just hold you, like they will open their arms to you and they'll hold you. And then they'll just be like, yeah. And that was really hard to see, but we're here for you because there's just no one like them. You really fucking need them. They lift you up, they help you put yourself back together. And I think that is so beautiful. So think about it. Who are your ride or dies? Who are the ones who have stuck by you through all of the mess, through every success, through every hurdle, and all the other idioms that I can think of? Um, and just, yeah, yeah, I'm gonna leave that there.
I love it. Yeah, I love the juxtaposition between these two cards. I think this period of time is very much a testament to like we contain multitudes, a lot going on. And I think that this card specifically really represents the Leo, like the ingress from Cancer Venus to Leo Venus. And to kind of take it a little bit further than communing with your friends, connecting with this, chosen family, these people who hold you down. Um, Tell them how you feel about them. Um, really admire them to their face. I think it's really valuable to share in like really concrete words, like how do you feel about the people in your life? And share that with them and express to them, the qualities that you admire about them. I know for me, like the foundation of starting my business and being able to actually know like what I'm able to offer people and what I'm capable of as a practitioner. The only reason I really understood that was because my friends told me. Um, and that like you never know whose life will change from those words. And I think that, you know, there's so much power, people who have Leo placements know this, like when people with Leo placements say stuff, there's a certain level of like authoritativeness that comes from it. And it's not like a overtly like, oh yeah, like I'm in charge, I'm saying this, like I'm the boss. But it's like a subversive, like just subconsciously, a lot of us respond to Leo placements with like, you're right. Like that's true. And so, if you like this Leo and Venus transit, like, or this Venus and Leo transit, um, it's an opportunity for everybody to feel that. So our words are a little bit more, they carry a little bit more weight. There's a little bit more meaning behind them. So it's a really powerful time to use that to build people up, and to really express your admiration and your gratitude for the people that have built you up.
Shout out those people.
Yeah, love them.
I also want to say that Luna has settled down after you.
See?
I have to
So
acknowledge
funny.
her. I can still hear her a little bit. Like I just heard her go like, hmm.
Yeah.
But
Sometimes we all just need a little acknowledgement.
she eventually self-soothes. So she's getting there.
She's
Okay,
living the horoscope in action. She's living the
literally.
tarot spread.
She really is. And I'm scared to read this next one.
That's
So
great.
I don't know. Okay, the next one is Ten of Swords reversed. Another just like juxtaposition This is for the people who thought, who, when I heard or when I read like the first card, that they were like, oh, all I need to do is ground and that's fine and I'll be fine, but I'm not going to make any decisions. This one is for you. This one is for you because you have still been resisting change and you haven't wanted to look at the situation that you're in. I get it. I don't want to look at a lot of things. But the more you resist whatever it is, the more power you give it over yourself. And I still feel like this, like, apprehension. I'm getting like the sense of a person who's like, I just wait for life to happen. Like, you are not being an active participant in your life, and you are not being an active, like, decision maker. Like, you just hope for the best. And this is not the time to do that. Like, you may not know what's on the other side, but you have to trust that it's going to be good because you are finally going to be playing an active role in building it. And you make decisions of who you co create that reality with. I feel like what this is like you're resistant to the change, you're resistant to make a decision, you're resistant to voice all of the things that you've harbored inside, all of the resentments you have, um, all of the expectations you have on people that you have not spelled out for them. And it's one of those things where, like, if you're not going to make a decision, life is going to make it for you. And you really have no say. Like, you have released, relinquished your maybe autonomy or your agency in what this situation is and how it plays out. And you just have to deal with the consequences. Like, you didn't make a decision. I get that. Decisions are really hard and they hurt a lot. The impact of things coming to an end or changing or collapsing, been there, done that. But at the very least, whatever the chaos brings, there's an end. Like, this is done. You cannot, but like, this is the point of no return at this point. And this is where you just kind of accept that this is happening and you release it, you let go, you cleanse yourself, you make space, and you just rebuild. And I guess part of this is also like really holding on to envisioning the kind of future that you want to live, the kind of present that you want to live, although that may feel a lot harder to be present for, but holding on to this vision you have for yourself and the life that you want for yourself and the people that you want in your life and who you want to be in this life, and hold on to that and use that as this guide or a North Star to just keep you going. Okay, Shroot, what's the vibe?
Yeah. Ooh. Well, one thing I want to name is this card, and I think the astrology, it's very much a prelude to Saturn in Aries, which we're going to get a little bit of a taste of next year, and then we'll really be in it by 2026. It's giving let go or be dragged, you know? So I encourage people, I think maybe a really positive way of looking at it could be um, you're fresh out of a really, really bad breakup and you just cut all your hair off. Like, that's kind of the vibe here. Stevie said, clock me. Um, yeah, because, like hair holds energy and hair holds weight and how, free we can feel. But then 2 weeks go by and we miss our hair. We miss the stuff we left behind. And I actually been feeling this lately, this feeling of like, I've been standing on my own 2 feet, really took control of my life in 2020. And ever since then, I've been really standing on that. And owning the choices that I make, regardless of how they turn out. And I think in times where I'm reminded, oh yeah, this is another choice that I have to, there's no right, easy answer. I just have to take an action and I have to stand behind it. Um, I get those moments where I'm like, I miss having a boss to blame things going wrong on. I miss having, parents to blame things on, or, just life stuff that is out of my control that I can just put the blame of things going wrong on. And I don't have to hold that myself, because it can feel really overwhelming to have to hold all of the weight of that myself. And I think whenever I get in those headspaces of missing when I gave my agency away, and I derived a sense of comfort and familiarity out of that, I think I like to remind myself, what are the things that like taking control of my life has achieved? What are the positives that I've gained from this? And also, when things go wrong, when things are chaotic, when things don't have a positive resolution, when it's not a clean, happy ending, like all of those are such powerful opportunities for growth and for learning so much about myself and about the way that I interact with the world. And um it's a reminder that like, yes, in the moment, 0 out of 10. Hate it here. Suffering big time. But in hindsight, there's so much like fertile ground to grow. Like there's so much space to grow from when it comes to making, really tough decisions that you feel like there's no right answer. And so allow yourself the opportunity to have access to that growth. And to have access to that growth, you have to make a hard choice. You have to cut the thing off. You have to, break free, start fresh. So yeah, embrace that. Embrace that because let go or be dragged. That's really just in store for the next couple years. So
Go or be dragged. The way you called me out,
so sorry.
anyone who doesn't know, one time, right before I ended up ending a nearly 5 year long relationship, I shaved my head.
So
I
bad.
just, I, I was like, I don't want this anymore. Or not this, as in like the relationship, although, yeah. But my hair, I think Shroot was one of the people that told me that hair holds grief and just energy in general. And I was thinking about what, like, what my hair was holding on to. A lot of expectations, a lot of disappointment, grief and loss and anger. And I wanted to let it go. And then I let everything go.
Yeah.
Every, my home, my chosen family, my relationship, a future I thought I was going to have. But I got something so beautiful out of it, which is a wonderful spouse, 3 cats, a new family, chosen family. Like, you know, it took time, but damn, that's crazy.
Sure.
Like, sometimes, really, like, you just
Yeah.
got to look back and say, damn, that's crazy.
Hmm.
Ah, okay. Are
Yeah.
you ready for the last one?
Yeah. First, I want to name like there's so much that can be said about, you know, hair as like the energetic relationship we have to our hair. And like it can be a manifestation tool, it can be a source of energy work where we do cut all of it off, we do release. There's so much like ritual and uh spiritual fulfillment that we can get with our relation to our hair. So I would love to talk about that. It's a big passion of mine. I am a DIYer. All of this is a DIY project. So yeah, email, let me know, or on social media, just let us know if you would like to know more about the hair stuff. Or if you had any other questions around ritual manifestation, like spiritual, like getting into more of the technical stuff. Because we've been talking really big picture stuff, but we also have a lot of joint knowledge between us on the technical ritualistic spirituality element, and we would love to talk about it. So let us know. Email us or comment or DM us on any social platform.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, last one, y'all, is the Queen of Rings, which is also the Queen of Pentacles. Um, this is like a really beautiful mothering energy, but not in a pushover kind of way, not in a coddling kind of way. It's this balance between like clean your room, do the dishes, take a shower, do the laundry, like do the things that you have to do to like actually take care of yourself and practice self-care. Like feed yourself, nourish yourself. Like it's this energy around you that is like, I love you. I'm here for you. Whatever that means. Like maybe it's not the kind of mother that you grew up with, but it is an energy that is still here for you. Um, and maybe this is also an opportunity for you to practice what parenting looks like, what you would have wanted parenting to look like for you. Like you get to practice that for yourself and you get to share that with other people too. But right now, this is about you. This is about nurturing yourself and nourishing yourself, practicing self care. If everything feels so empty, tidy up. Fill that space with things that feel good. Like if you are literally, like, I see this vision of like you broke up, you ended something, you are in your new home, in your new room by yourself. And yeah, that comes with a lot. But I also see like you making that space your own, you putting your energy and your love on the walls, like putting up pictures on the walls, like painting the room, getting a comforter in a color that you like that maybe other people didn't like. Those types of things that like you are putting your own imprint into your space. And it is your space. I feel like a sanctuary, like it is protected. There is prosperity and security and whatever the hell this season brought to you or is bringing to you, just know that you are loved and cared for, even if it doesn't feel like it. There are so many things on the other side of this feeling, and just got to ride through it. You just got to trust the process and trust yourself.
I love that. Oh, that's so powerful. I think definitely very Cancerian. That, even if you don't have cancer placements, like we all have cancer somewhere in our chart. We all have an opportunity to extend ourselves that loving, nurturing care, whether we received it from our mothers or not. And I think especially for people who feel like they may not have received the love that they needed from their mom, what does it look like to ask the younger versions of you that didn't have those needs met, those emotional needs met, you know, what what needs do you need met? And to learn how to be that for yourself. And to really like think of it as like a devotional practice. And I think to a certain extent, it might be helpful to, if you are religious or you have a connection to a religious practice and it's not like a triggering thing for you to look at it from this perspective, but you know, what does it look like to express your devotion to that version of yourself that didn't get that need met? And I think something that I'm really benefiting from that's been coming like full circle for me as I'm going through my Saturn return is the versions of myself that I felt were least accepted by my peers, my community, my family. Um, those versions of myself are bringing me all of the ways in which like there's bringing me so many gifts that are necessary in my life right now. And it's just been so full circle for so many different things this year. And every time that it happens, I'm filled with so much gratitude for that version of myself that persisted even in the face of non-acceptance. Um, and so what does it look like to extend acceptance to that version of myself? So that's one thing that I felt like I didn't get. How do I extend that to myself? So to really self-examine and to see, okay, like, how do, and I think a lot of it too is the way that your parents talk to you, and this is like a transition from Cancer to Leo season, but like the way that your parents talk to you, how that in turn shapes the way that you talk to yourself. And so um that could be, if we're talking about endings and breakups, it's not necessarily about a partnership, especially in a romantic context. I think it could definitely be a breakup with like a way that you treat yourself. So I know for me with the hair cutting, it's never been about like a partner for me or anything like that. I don't do the breakup and get a haircut, but I like shed versions of myself. And every time I shed a version of myself, I cut my hair off, or I bleach it or I do something. And so it's like if you're shedding a version of yourself, part of that could be like the way that you talk to yourself. So how are you replenishing your relationship to the way that you talk to yourself? And how can you, understand that yes, there is so much pain of like what you experienced in your childhood or, what you didn't get. Um, but then there's also the rest of your life ahead of you to choose how you relate to yourself. And it's not easy. It's that work, like Stevie said, of like cleaning your room, of doing these tasks that, are not fun. It's not easy, it's not comfortable, but it's like a habit to build. And once you're able to transform that relationship to yourself, it becomes another version of a gift that you're basically offering future you. So if you're having a really hard time connecting to, um, you know, worthiness or treating yourself with kindness, giving yourself that mothering, protective, loving energy that you don't feel like you receive or you don't know how to do that, understand that any gains that you make now, in the weeds with it, struggling, feeling really insecure about it and just muddling through, any of the gains that you make now are gifts that you get to offer future you, the way that now I'm able to receive the gifts that those vulnerable versions of me had to offer me, and I just didn't know it yet. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
I think that's it then.
Yeah. Ooh, that was a good one. This is a really, really, we talked about a lot. I loved it.
Doozy.
Um, we offer this type of joint tarot astrology session in the form of a joint reading called Dance with Datura, where we go over, the tarot and the astrology relevant to any season of your life, and we help you cultivate strategies to learn how to bloom even in the dark. And if you are interested in learning how these tactics of tarot and astrology can apply to you, I really encourage you to book a joint reading with us. You can find the link to do that in the show notes.
Yay.
Yay.
Where else can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm at Shrew Trees everywhere: Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, I'm on there. So yeah, go ahead and follow me. We can talk. And what about you, Stevie? Where can they find you?
Okay, y'all can find me at cosmic dot return on Instagram and TikTok. Who
Yeah.
knows if I'll add more stuff on TikTok, but
I've been loving your TikToks.
thank you.
But yeah, you can check out our websites for all of our further offerings if you're interested in working with us, either together or separately. That'll also be linked in the show notes. And thanks for listening.
Hooray. Bye, y'all.
See you
Love
next
you.
time. Love you. Bye.